It's a huge privilege now for me to introduce the Chief Rabbi. Now, the Chief Rabbi doesn't need too much introduction, but I will say a couple of things. Number one is the reason why he's so qualified to talk about what it is to merge a shul and we kind of connect with the community is that, first of all, he became the rabbi at Western Marble Arch the year after the Western Shul and Marble Arch Shul merged. And so he is intimately experienced in merging shuls, and he's seen it in provincial communities as well. He also was the rabbi for Kinloss for many years, and there he developed an education program which has seen hundreds or possibly thousands of people reconnect to the shul as a result of that program. So the idea that we have of creating communal programming to enhance the shul and so on is something, again, that the Chief Rabbi is familiar with. But above everything, in his office, to take such an interest in this community is really inspiring for us. So, Chief Rabbi, thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mark. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Well, it's such a pleasure for me to be here this evening. And congratulations to all our previous speakers. Congratulations, Tony, on your speech and on everything you and your foundation are trying to do for the community here. And Tony, I hope you realize that you're on the record saying if you get 3 points every week, you're coming to shul 3 times a day. I'm reminded of a man who had an appointment in the West End. The meeting was to start at 4 o'clock, and he had to be there on time. To save his job, he had to be there on time. He left quite early from home, gave himself a lot of time, but the traffic was so enormous, he just couldn't find a parking place, and he was going round the block, round, and he was schwitzing. It was coming closer and closer to 4 o'clock. And eventually, out of desperation, he turned heavenwards and he said, Almighty God, if you find a parking place for me, I promise I'll keep kosher, I'll keep Shabbos, and I'll come to shul 3 times a day. Literally just 5 seconds later, in front of him, a car pulls out from a parking spot, and it's right there for him to drive into. He looks up to the heavens, he says, God, you know what I was talking about a moment ago? Don't worry about it, I've just found a space. But if Brighton and Hove Albion really do well, we know the reason. And I remember when I paid a visit to the Bournemouth community in the summer of 2 years ago. And at that time, the community was full of so much excitement because AFC Bournemouth had just been promoted to the Premier League. And the chairman of the community got up to welcome me. And he said, Chief Rabbi, thanks to your inspiration, I think that AFC Bournemouth are going to stay in the Premier League for at least 3 seasons, autumn, winter, and spring. So my bracha to Brighton and Hove Albion is, may Almighty God bless you to be in the league for more than 3 seasons, and that's not just autumn, winter, and spring. My wife and I have really got to love Brighton. Even before we had a family connection here, we would come to visit, come with the family, have the odd holiday. It's a beautiful, majestic, wonderful town. Most of all, the people are just lovely. It's warm, it's friendly, it's welcoming. And then in the course of the years, we would pay quite a number of visits, primarily to the Holland Road Shul, which is such a beautiful building, but more importantly, what lovely people, leaders, and the community. So nice for me to see Rabbi Rader, of course, here this evening. But in particular, I want to welcome Rabbi Tebek Spitzer, of whom I've heard so many wonderful things. Thanks for everything you're doing here. Bit of a clap, maybe. And as has been said in the introduction, I pay careful attention to everything that's happening to our communities throughout the country. We have now, after 4 years in office, just about visited nearly every Orthodox community in the country. And I'm so impressed with the selflessness of people, the devotion to community life, to some simply wonderful shuls. And I have noticed what's happening within our communities, and they can be divided into 3 categories. There are those who are lucky enough to be managing success, a growing community, with an incredible challenge. Well, do we open another shul? How do we manage with so many people in shul? How lucky they are. Then you have those who are maintaining numbers, and their role is to guarantee that things will remain the same. And then you have those who are managing decline. And that's quite a challenge. But ladies and gentlemen, actually, we're not here this evening for any one of those three. We're here for a different purpose, reversing decline. And that's music to my ears. How fortunate the Jewish community of Brighton is to be presented with an opportunity, not just to manage decline, but hopefully to reverse decline, given the fact that the overall population of the city is increasing, that this is a fantastically appealing place, not just to visit, but to live in, and its closeness to London, and the facilities that exist, and the space on the ground that you have. Thankfully, we're in a position to reverse decline and to start picking up numbers. And actually, I can give you a precedent for that. Amongst my Commonwealth role, European roles, I'm also responsible for the Jewish community of Hong Kong. And in December, my wife and I will be paying our third visit to Hong Kong since I took on office. It's a marvelous community. But why is the Hong Kong community today so successful? In the 1980s, numbers were declining, and there were less than 2,000 Jews left in Hong Kong. Beautiful ancient synagogue on Robinson Road, surrounded by many skyscrapers, difficult to maintain the building, the numbers. And we know that numbers fluctuate in Hong Kong. There are many people coming in and out, a few years here, a few years there on business, but there is also a strong core of people maintaining the community. And a few businessmen got together and they thought of an idea. It was absolutely meshuggah. It was so out of the box that everybody they spoke to said, "You're crazy." But when they spoke to bank managers about it, they responded positively. And what was their idea? To get sufficient loans in order to build 2 skyscrapers on the shul grounds. And that's what they did. Today you'll visit Robinson Road Shul. You'll see those 2 skyscrapers on the shul grounds, each one 43 stories high. And thanks to the income from the rental they receive from the apartments in those buildings, the community is not only secure financially, but everything has changed. There are now 5,000 Jews in Hong Kong belonging to 6 shuls. They guess that there are an additional 5,000 who are there but who are not members of anything, but do visit shuls from time to time. The turning point came with the new development. The skyscrapers and also the bottom 5 stories of one of the buildings was allocated to a new community center. Phenomenal facilities, plus flats for the rabbis, the heads of the school, the caretaker, etc. And there was such excitement. The sense of thrill was palpable. People were proud, telling everybody in the world, "Look what's happening here. Come visit. Come stay. Come try it out." And because of that level of excitement, what previously had been a demoralized mood changed into one where people were forward-looking, grasping hold of an opportunity. I'm not here this evening to suggest that you build skyscrapers here on your shul grounds. But actually, what the Bloom Foundation is suggesting is the identical concept. It's something fresh, it's appealing, it's courageous, it's at the right time, and instead of things gradually getting lower and lower to really low ebb, you have now an opportunity to reverse decline. It is a historic opportunity. I've had 2 personal experiences with regard to shuls, one of which didn't merge, the other in a situation where it did merge. And of course, by the way, I'm totally aware of the fact that this new development of the new Church Road site is one for the entire community. And when I spoke earlier about loving Brighton, loving the Jewish community, it's the entire community. I remember 3 years ago addressing the community from this stage, in this hall, because everybody here, all Jews, all members, you're phenomenal. The commitment that you give to welfare, the support you give for the state of Israel, the interest that you have in everything Jewish, the gute neshamas you have in order to be good citizens and outstanding people. It makes me immensely proud. But I hope that our progressive and reform friends will forgive me if just for a few minutes I speak about the two Orthodox shuls, because actually the future of the Orthodox community will make all the difference to the wider community. When I was Chief Rabbi of Ireland, there were two prime synagogues in the city. Adelaide Road, close to the city centre, magnificent building, my favourite building. A declining community, people didn't live that much in the area, low attendances. And then there was the Terenure community, the heart of the living Jewish community of Dublin, lots of young families. And it was obvious to everybody over decades that a merger between the two was the right way forward. Unfortunately, it didn't happen. And when did the merger take place? When the Adelaide Road community couldn't pay the bills for heating, for electricity, couldn't maintain a minyan, so the merger took place when the community was just about dead. So as a result, that eventual merger in a situation of weakness did provide some financial input into the merged entity, but nothing more than that. And everybody realized actually they should have merged in a situation of strength rather than leaving things to that situation of weakness. As Mark mentioned in his introduction, I was privileged to be the first rabbi of the Western Marble Arch community. Rabbi Lord Sachs had been the rabbi of Marble Arch. In 1991, he was appointed chief rabbi. And during the last year of his in office, two shuls merged, Marble Arch and the Western Synagogue just 1 mile away. And I therefore presided over a new merged entity. It was very exciting. And I saw how they did it. It was a model that worked. Everything worked in the favor of the members of the shul that had closed. So the Western Synagogue, which gave up their building, they had the best seats in shul. They had guaranteed 50% of members on the board, leadership of the community for a certain number of years. In so many different respects, they didn't only retain their rights were improved. They were made to feel comfortable. Stained glass windows and other appurtenances of the shul were built into the Marble Arch community. And today it is genuinely the Western Marble Arch community, and everybody is absolutely happy. So I had the good fortune to see what should have happened in Ireland actually taking place in London. And from all of my experiences, I have learned 4 important lessons. The first is, what matters most of all is minyan and not binyan. We're blessed throughout the Jewish world to have magnificent buildings. No wonder we're in love with our shul. No wonder there are people who are emotionally connected to their shul. No wonder that it's the epicenter of our Yiddishkeit. It's all good. But I must tell you, people are more important than buildings. One of the most moving experiences I had as chief rabbi was in November 2013, just 2 months after I came into office. It was an event which had been planned before. It was to consecrate the new Birmingham Central Synagogue. And actually, you were told earlier what Jeffrey Clements, the chairman of the synagogue, said. But I'll never forget the sight when I arrived to Shul on Shabbos morning. You see, what they had done was, after a merger failed with Singers Hill, just by 1 vote, as you heard, so they decided to downsize. They sold their shul and half the property it was in to a development company, and they moved into their shul hall, and within their shul hall, they created a lovely little gem of a shul, and I came to consecrate that new shul. But when I arrived, what did I see? I didn't expect to see this. You see, their beautiful historic shul was being demolished, and it was half standing, and all the rubble was on the ground. And as we walked into the new shul to consecrate it, we walked past that old shul in ruins. And I said to the members of Birmingham Central, I'm in awe being in your presence. What incredible courage you've got to be able to do what you did. But they all responded afterwards at the Kiddush and they said, no regrets. Seeing that building they were so attached to in a state of rubble, no regrets. We're at home. This is the way forward. It makes so much sense. Look at the facilities we've got. Not just a shul, but a hall and a shop and etc. Now that we've got it, we know, as painful as the decision was, it is the right way forward. So my first lesson is minyan, not binyan, people who count most of all, and not buildings. Second lesson is, as I referred to earlier, the best time for a merger is in a state of strength and not in a state of weakness. There is no value in saying, we're not against a merger, but not now. Later on, it could be possible. Effectively, what you're saying is, we want to stay in business for as long as the shul can be kept going, until there's hardly anybody left, and then eventually you can take our assets and our money. But of what value is that to a community, to the children, to the opportunity for growth, for adding a dimension of excitement to Jewish life? It's not there. So therefore, the fact that over Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, you'll see lots of people, and people will be wondering themselves, wow, so many people in the shul, why is anybody talking about a merger? The fact that there is strength is the reason why you must make a merger now. Because that will provide for a great future, particularly bearing in mind the reality of the statistics that have been presented to you, which brings me to my third point. My third point is, if you're making a decision about whether to merge or not, don't think about today. Think about 10 to 20 years' time, because the decision you're taking is not for today. It's for the future. Mark's last words in his presentation were, this is a historic opportunity never to be repeated, and he's right. Yes, technically, perhaps in the future, there could be a possibility for a merger, but merging at this time in this way to create a new future and the right kind of atmosphere for Brighton Jewry, you're not going to get it again. Think, therefore, what's going to happen in 10 years' time? What will our numbers be? What will our strength be? What will our age profile be? How many kids will there be here for? Why are we doing this all? And think about the broader interests of the entire community's future. And the fourth lesson I've learned is, don't allow personalities to get in the way of what is logical and reasonable. Don't think, oh, so-and-so is of a certain view, is doing so much good work, we have to listen to them. Or so-and-so is in a certain position, so what position will that person have in the event that such and such happens? These are temporal matters. They're matters for now. Don't allow considerations about rabbis to get in the way. Don't allow considerations about your chief rabbi to get in the way. I don't want anybody to listen to me because I'm the chief rabbi, and therefore you should listen. If there is any value in what I'm saying, it should be because I'm speaking logic, I'm speaking sense. That's what should determine the path that you take. And with regard to rabbis, it is my strong recommendation that if a merger takes place in this city, that you keep your rabbis. You do what happened in Redbridge United Shul only 3 years ago, when Newbury Park and the Redbridge community joined together to produce Redbridge United. Sounds a bit like a football team, but anyway, it's a shul. And Rabbi Wilson, Reverend Newman, the two of them became joint ministers of the community. That is what I would recommend to you. You've got wonderful rabbis. Keep them, utilize them. In fact, by pooling resources together, you will have the financial ability to have more than one rabbi, to have outstanding resources. That's what you need to make your decision on. Not personalities, but what's the best thing for the future, for the wider community, what is in its interest. You might be thinking, why am I here? When I heard about this development, I did take a keen interest, bearing in mind what I've seen around the country and around the world, and I asked to come. That's because I believe that in my role as chief rabbi, it is not my role to win a popularity contest. I'm not here to make everybody love me and adore me all the time. It would be nice, but that's not what I'm in my position for. The Almighty has given me a position through which I believe that my role is hopefully to inspire to provide guidance and direction for the future of Judaism in this country. And that's why I'm willing to raise my head above the parapet. And that's why I'm here to tell you what I think. You can accept it, you can reject it. Please just use whatever logic and reason you have in your heads, doing the responsible thing. At the end of the day, it's not what I say that counts, it's your vote. And I'm pretty certain that when the two synagogue members' bodies vote, because it's the members who need to express their opinions, when that happens, you will decide together, with each vote counting from the membership, as to what the right future will be. So that's the message that I want to give you. I want to congratulate those who have thought of this most original, creative, courageous, and wonderful plan. You've got amazing partnerships. You've got a recipe for certain success. I like the fact that it's for the broader community, for all of Brighton Jews to come together through a facility while maintaining the Orthodox ethos of the site. It's a great model, and I applaud you for the thought and for the intentions. In the course of the next few months, it will really be over to the membership of the shuls. And in whatever you decide, I'll be with you in your final decision. May God bless you all. Thank you.